I'm really excited to be here today and talk to you about a topic that I'm really passionate about, radiopharmaceuticals in Canada. As was mentioned, I'm Valerie. I lead the CMC team for the radioligand therapy programs at Eli Lilly, but my whole career has been in radiopharma, over 22 years now. So that perspective is why I'm exactly here today. It's all been based out of Canada, and Canada has been quietly becoming one of the best places to run radiopharmaceutical clinical trials in the world, and I want to show you why. So here's the curious thing about Canadian radiopharma, and we got a little bit of a preview of this in the last topic. In 2016, Canada shut down the nuclear reactor at Chalk River. For decades, that one facility shipped roughly a third of the world's most used medical isotope, Moly-99, which is the precursor to the most used diagnostic isotope in medicine, technetium-99. So when it closed, the conventional wisdom 10 years ago might have been, Canadian radiopharma was done. But yet today, 10 years later, more radiopharmaceutical development and manufacturing and medical isotope supply is being done in Canada than ever before. That's the question I want to answer today. Why? How does a country lose its biggest isotope source and end up leading not only in manufacturing and supply of these isotopes and medicines, but also dominating in the radiopharma clinical trial space? But before I answer that question, I just want to give a quick word on why I'm the one who's trying to answer it. As I mentioned, I've spent more than 20 years building a career in radiopharmaceutical development and supply. But when I started, I was working a night shift at a small radiopharmacy in Mississauga, manufacturing spec doses. Our site produced many doses a day, but the supply chain was regional. Doses left our facility and reached patients within a few hours radius. Today, my work is done at the other end of the spectrum, powering global theranostic trials from end to end, the isotope through manufacturing and release, into the hands of investigators worldwide. 20 of the years that I've been working have been with Canadian companies and the last 2 at Eli Lilly. So when I talk about Canadian radiopharma, I'm not theorizing, I've watched this ecosystem grow from the inside. My career trajectory isn't unique. It mirrors what we've been seeing happening in this entire field. For decades, radiopharma was almost entirely a diagnostic story. Short-lived imaging isotopes made locally, dispensed across town, and used the same day. Now we're in the area of targeted radiotherapy, longer-lived therapeutic isotopes that can be shipped to trial sites across borders and time zones. The supply chain is global. The clinical stakes are a lot higher. The patient on the other end isn't just getting a scan, they're getting treated. So that sounds pretty straightforward on a slide, but in practice, that shift runs headfirst into physics. Let me show you what I mean. Every radiopharmaceutical has 3 hard constraints. These are not business problems that you can negotiate around, they're physics. First, they have short shelf lives. The moment you make a dose, it's already decaying. You measure its useful life in days, hours, and sometimes even minutes. 2, complex logistics, cold chain, radiation shielding, customs paperwork trying to get materials across borders. The dose has to arrive on schedule, the correct activity, and ready to use. And finally, these are really expensive to manufacture. The cost of cyclotrons, reactors, hot cells, specialized staff. These fixed costs of standing up production are enormous. And here's the part that makes this genuinely hard. Those costs apply to every single dose, every patient, every time. There's no batch you can warehouse, no inventory you can build up. You make it, you ship it, you use it, or you throw it out. So if the science is constrained, why is Canada thriving? Well, that's where it gets interesting. So here's the thing about those 3 constraints, they're not going away. They're not solvable. They're not one breakthrough away. A short half-life, complex logistics, high production costs. Those are properties of the underlying physics. They will still be true in 10 years, 20 years, forever. So the question that I've been trying to answer over the last 2 decades isn't how do we beat the physics? It's what kind of ecosystem can win despite the physics? This is not a science problem, it's an ecosystem problem. And once you reframe it this way, the answer to slide 2, why is Canada thriving, stops being mysterious and starts being structural. So structural means 3 specific things, 3 strengths that Canada has lined up over the last 20 years and that together are hard to find anywhere else. Supply. Canada makes it. The regulators. Canada knows it. And academia. Canada runs it. So let's look at each one of these in turn, and I'll start with what gets made here. Canada manufactures across the whole stack, both the medicines and the isotopes that go into them. On the theranostic sides, we have companies like Isologic and AtomV, amongst numerous others who are developing processes, manufacturing and supplying imaging agents and targeted therapies right here in Canada under GMP. They label, they release them, and they ship them to patients in Canada and worldwide. On the isotope side, we've heard a lot about this already this morning. Triumph in Vancouver, BWXT, CNL, Burst Power, I could name so many more. They're all developing and scaling domestic and international supply of the therapeutic isotopes that the world needs next, lutetium, actinium, and emerging isotopes such as lead-212. And this is the answer to the Moly-99 question I opened with. When that production ended, that capability didn't disappear. Canada redirected decades of nuclear radiochemistry expertise into therapeutic isotopes, and the ones that actually matter for the next era of cancer treatments. So looking at our regulatory landscape, this is the one that I think is truly underrated. Canada has 2 regulators who already speak this language fluently. Health Canada has been reviewing radiopharmaceuticals for decades. When we file a clinical trial application here, we're not educating reviewers from scratch. We're following an established pathway. They've seen the chemistry, they know the controls. And they don't just review, they problem solve. An example from a few years ago, when actinium-225 supply was very constrained globally, we needed a submission pathway that would take a potentially life-saving therapy to a patient forward without the volume of CMC data we would normally have. Health Canada worked with us to find one. They didn't lower the bar, they helped us reach it differently, expediting their review. That kind of partnership you can't manufacture, it comes from decades of mutual understanding. And on the other side, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission licenses every site that handles these isotopes. Sites know how to get licensed, the regulators know how to license them. Site readiness stopped being a barrier in this country a long time ago. In a lot of countries, regulatory friction is what slows radiopharma trials to a crawl. In Canada, it's the part that just works. And our final strength, well, not the only one, but the third strength, and arguably the one that I think keeps everything moving and all together, is our academic centers. We can't run the trials without them. Canada has them, and they were ready early. Canadian PIs were investigator-driven early on in theranostics. They were running these trials before the rest of the world caught up. More than 15 years ago, and people in this room will probably remember this, Canada launched MITNEC, Medical Imaging Trial Network of Canada, under the Federal Isotope Supply Initiative. Its flagship trial, MITNEC A1, ran across 10 academic sites, with 6 of them manufacturing an F-18 imaging agent under one harmonized process. That kind of national coordination was years ahead of its time. And it's still paying off today. From coast to coast, a network of academic cancer centers now hosts radiopharmaceutical trials at scale. An example, a recent global phase 3 study ran at more than 50 sites worldwide. Princess Margaret Hospital in Toronto was the highest enrolling site, period. We actually had to cap their enrollment to make sure we had representative data from other regions. And that points to something the industry isn't talking about enough. In many parts of the world, traditional radiopharma trial hubs have become saturated. Canadian sites still have capacity. They can enroll faster because the rest of the ecosystem keeps them unblocked. So when sponsors ask, where should we run our study? Canada isn't a backup, they're a first call. So that capacity advantage depends on people, and that's where I just want to end my talk today. I think this is the area where we can get even better. We need to train people before they graduate. When I graduated more than 20 years ago, I didn't know radiopharmaceutical careers even existed. Everything I learned was taught to me on the job. Not a lot of that has changed. There are, of course, a handful of wonderful Canadian universities who are running strong postgraduate programs in radiochemistry and nuclear medicine, but at the undergraduate level, it's still pretty rare. Most students go through the 4 years of chemistry, pharmacy, or physics and never know that this field exists. And that same gap exists upstream in isotope production. The cyclotron operators, the GMP staff who make lutetium, actinium, and lead-212 have to be trained. We have the regulators, the manufacturers, and the network. The next chapter is going to be the people who are going to run all 3. So that's the case. Canada has the supply, the regulators, the clinical trial site network, and the opportunity to build the workforce that makes this next chapter possible. And I want to just reach out a little bit here to the students that are here today. I want you to know that I am proof you can start a career in radiopharma in Canada and build it here. I did. If anything that I shared today sounds interesting to you, please come find me after the talk, and I'd love to talk to you about how to figure out to make that happen. Canada is built for this work. Let's keep building together. Thank you.